Hey friend, please subscribe. 1 second for you. Big deal for me.
Tomorrow I'd give a speech no one would remember and a gift I'd never get back. My name's Ray Dalton. I'm 39 now, but this story starts the night before my father's retirement ceremony. Harold Dalton. He ran Dalton Freight for 45 years, started loading pallets in a warehouse when he was 19, retired as president, built a whole empire from trucks, spreadsheets, and stress. He lived and breathed that job. Every story he ever told had a shipping route or a profit margin in it. He raised 2 sons. Nathan was the golden boy. Me? I was the backup plan that nobody ever called in. I stood in front of the motel mirror, a tie in one hand and a mouthful of lines I didn't mean. I was trying to rehearse a toast, something short, forgettable, polite. One of those speeches people smile through and immediately forget by dessert. I didn't want to do it. But when Nathan texted earlier that week, "Dad's expecting something from you," I knew what it meant. Not a real thank you, not an honest word. Just a little dog and pony show to keep the Dalton brand polished. There was a gift box on the bed. Small, square, wrapped in black paper with a silver ribbon I'd tied twice to make it look presentable. Inside was a copy of the first invoice I ever landed for Dalton Freight, back in 2010. My first solo deal. $12,000 in contracted shipments with a regional manufacturer. I got it after 14 cold calls, no support, and 0 encouragement. Just grit. That was my proof, not that he'd care. I looked at myself in the mirror again. The tie still hung in my hand. I couldn't even make myself put it on. The whole thing felt fake, like I was putting on a uniform that didn't belong to me anymore. Nathan had already posted some smug photo from the gala ballroom. Crystal lights, dozens of tables labeled after old freight terminals. He and Dad were standing shoulder to shoulder, each holding a glass of something expensive. Their smiles matched. I wasn't in that photo. Of course I wasn't. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Mom. "Excited to see you tomorrow. Please try not to make waves." Classic. That was her thing. Keeping peace, keeping smiles, even when the room was full of knives. I tossed the phone onto the bed and finally started tying the knot. Each pull felt tighter than the last. This whole trip, this whole weekend was a formality. A favor. One last duty before I could disappear for good. I didn't tell anyone, but I'd booked a one-way ticket. I wasn't flying back. I was done. Outside the motel window, Tulsa's neon haze glowed dim and slow, like the city itself was exhausted. I knew the feeling. I'd been running on fumes for years, pretending there was still some version of us in that family. Tomorrow I'd give a speech that no one would remember, hand over a gift that meant everything to me and nothing to him, shake hands, smile, and then I'd walk out, for good. They just didn't know it yet. Even back then, I knew a standing ovation would never come from the Dalton living room. We grew up in a beige house in Tulsa. Beige walls, beige furniture, beige rules. Everything was functional, nothing was soft. Dad believed in order, not affection. You followed the system or you got left behind. That was his mantra. He said it the same way people quote the Bible, sharp and final. We don't do pity, we don't do chaos, you work the plan. Nathan was the plan. He was the athlete, the leader, the chosen one. State wrestling champ by junior year, ROTC captain. He had that chin-up, yes-sir attitude that made Dad's chest puff out. When Nathan spoke, people listened. When I spoke, people double-checked if Nathan had already said it first. Me? I was the kid who liked computers. I used to take apart broken microwaves from the junkyard just to figure out how the circuits talked to each other. I taught myself Python when I was 13, built a root simulator on a clunky old desktop in the garage. I was proud of it. I even showed Dad once. He stared at the screen for about 6 seconds. "What am I looking at?" he said. I tried to explain. "It takes customer requests and predicts the most efficient dispatch order based on cartoons," he said, already walking away. "This is just cartoons." That night, he and Nathan watched a game together in the living room. I stayed in the garage, debugging lines of code I didn't know how to name yet. That was normal. Mom would sometimes say, "Ray's just different," like it was a compliment, but it never sounded like one. In school, I didn't make waves. I got decent grades, kept my head down. While Nathan was lifting trophies, I was filing shipping receipts at a local warehouse to save for community college. I worked graveyard shifts back to back, trying to stack tuition money while Dad told anyone who'd listen, "Nathan's got leadership in his blood." When I finally enrolled in college, I did it without asking for a dime. Got into a dual degree program, data analytics and supply chain systems. Fitting, right? Still trying to speak his language? Still trying to earn a chair at the table? He missed my graduation. Said he had to travel for a merger. Mom mailed me a card. It had $20 inside and a note in her loopy handwriting. "We're proud of you. Don't make a fuss." That was how they loved, efficiently. After college, I applied at Dalton Freight. Figured I'd put my skills to use, maybe find a place on the analytics team. Dad looked at my resume like it was a breakfast menu. "Can't just bring in family because they ask," he said. "People will think it's favoritism." Nathan, by that point, was already managing the Arkansas Freight Division. No interview needed. That was different, of course. So I took a job at a startup in Chicago. One of those gig economy delivery companies that everyone laughed at in 2012 and envied by 2017. I built a predictive routing model that cut their fuel usage by 17% in 6 months. I got promoted twice. Still, every holiday dinner, Dad asked me the same thing. "Still messing with that app thing?" Eventually, I stopped explaining. Thanksgiving a few years back, Nathan made a toast about family and legacy. Dad clinked his glass with pride. I offered to help clean up the kitchen afterward. Nobody noticed when I left early. I'm not bitter. That's what I always told myself. I was building something real, something mine. But deep down, I kept waiting. For one damn moment, one look, one sentence that said, "I see you, Ray. I see what you've done." It never came. I learned how to build systems that ran cleaner than Dad's entire company. But in that house, I was still Ray the quiet one, not Ray the capable, not Ray the builder, just the backup plan. And backup plans only get called when something breaks. Nothing had broken yet, so I stayed silent. But that silence, it wasn't peace. It was pressure, years and years of pressure. Until that night in the motel room, with a tie in my hand and a fake speech in my throat, and the weight of a lifetime sitting on my chest like a freight load I didn't remember signing for. I wasn't just done building bridges. I was starting to see where I should have drawn the line in the sand. That line was coming. Tomorrow. I just didn't know how deep it would go. Every time I walked into their world, I had to shrink a little just to fit. I flew into Tulsa the morning before the gala and checked into a modest place downtown, far from the suburban sprawl where I grew up. It was one of those new boutique hotels with concrete ceilings and minimalist furniture that made you feel both chic and slightly uncomfortable. That was fine. I wasn't planning to be there long. My carry-on sat in the corner, zipped tight. Inside it was the gift box, wrapped in black paper, with the old invoice folded neatly inside. My first independent client back in 2010. No help, no safety net, just me cold calling until someone took a chance. I'd stared at that invoice before leaving Chicago, remembering how proud I'd been, how stupidly hopeful. I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd finally say, "Good work, son." He never did. The Hilton Ballroom looked like it had been sponsored by an awards show. Giant freight terminal signs labeled every table. St. Louis, Phoenix, Charlotte. Buffet trays steamed under polished silver lids. Waiters circled with flutes of champagne. In the corner, a slideshow was playing on loop. Old photos, scanned newspaper clippings, logos from over the decades. Dad shaking hands with mayors, ribbon cuttings, truck convoys stretching across highways. I scanned the screen and felt my stomach drop. Nathan, in a sharp blue suit, shaking Dad's hand at a ribbon cutting. Nathan standing next to a new rig with Dalton Freight plastered on the side. Nathan at a veterans fundraiser pinning something on Dad's lapel. No photos of me, not one. I didn't even rate a grainy shot from the 90s. Just vanished. Like I'd never been there. Like I didn't spend high school weekends helping sort invoices in the back office. Like I didn't pull double shifts one Christmas when half the dispatch team got the flu. I spotted Mom standing near the coffee bar. She wore that soft gray dress she always pulled out for events, the one with the faint pearl pattern on the collar. Her smile appeared when she saw me, small and tight like she'd been holding her breath since I landed. "Ray," she said, gently patting my arm. "You look good." I gave her a half smile. "Hey, Mom." "You flew in okay?" she asked. "Got the hotel I recommended?" "I did." "Good." She paused, then added in a quieter voice, "He's really looking forward to tonight." I almost laughed. "You mean Nathan?" She winced. "Please, don't start something." "I'm not starting anything." She nodded, but her eyes darted back toward the slideshow. Nathan found me next. Half hug, the kind where only shoulders touch. "Still doing that tech stuff for that delivery app?" he asked, smirking. "Yeah," I said, deadpan. "Just restructured a fleet to save them $4.8 million in fuel. Not bad for tech stuff." He made a face like he couldn't tell if I was joking. "Still living up in Chicago?" "Still living where I'm wanted." That made him pause, but only for a second. "Well," he said, adjusting his cufflinks, "don't be weird tonight, okay? This thing's about Dad." "Thanks for the reminder." Before he could answer, a booming voice came from across the room. "Ray!" It was Ron Gillespie, Dad's oldest business partner. "Haven't seen you in a coon's age." We made small talk. He asked if I'd joined the family business yet. I said no. He said, "Shame. That's your blood, boy." Then walked off without waiting for a reply. That was the theme of the evening. People looked at me like I was a former intern who'd wandered back in by mistake. I wasn't in the slideshow. I wasn't in the speeches. I wasn't on the seating chart. Just an afterthought tucked between someone's +1 and the coat check. As I sipped from a water glass and listened to freight company veterans swap stories about the good old days, I realized something. This was not a celebration of a man. It was a coronation. Harold Dalton wasn't retiring. He was passing the crown to his chosen heir. And it wasn't me. At exactly 6:40, a staff member called everyone's attention. "Please take your seats. The program will begin shortly." I found my place at the Albuquerque table. Ironic, since I'd optimized that route a decade ago and no one noticed. The black gift box sat beside my plate. Small, square, silent. A ticking truth bomb. The lights dimmed. The slideshow looped one last time. And my name never came up. The audience laughed like it was just a joke, but I felt it like a slap. The MC was some local radio guy with a voice like polished gravel. He made a few corny jokes about long-haul truckers, then said the line we were all waiting for. "Let's honor a legend, Harold Dalton." Applause thundered through the room. People stood. I clapped too, but my hands barely moved. Dad walked up to the mic with his usual swagger. Crisp gray suit, Dalton freight pin on his lapel, the look of a man who'd spent his whole life in charge and expected nothing less on the way out. He adjusted the microphone. "Thank you, really. I'm not used to being the center of attention." Everyone laughed. I sat up a little straighter. A part of me, maybe the stupid part, hoped for something. A word. A nod. Anything. Dad grinned. "I've always believed in hard work, discipline, showing up early and staying late. You build something by showing up when nobody else does." Another round of clapping. I stared down at my untouched plate. He went on. 45 years. That's a lot of truck stops and late nights. A lot of missed birthdays. Sorry about that, hun." He smiled over at Mom, who gave the smallest of waves. "And I couldn't have done it without my family. My wife, of course, who never let me forget when I was gone too long. And my son Nathan." He paused. "My son Nathan is the kind of man this country needs. Strong, dependable, loyal. He didn't just inherit the Dalton name, he earned it." A spotlight actually hit Nathan for a second. People clapped. Someone at our table gave him a slap on the back. Nathan looked smug as hell but tried to play it humble. Dad laughed softly into the mic. "Of course, not everyone's cut out for this world. Some folks just drift." The room broke into polite laughter. It was brief but loud enough. A few people turned and looked around, some at me, some just scanning the crowd. I sat perfectly still. He hadn't said my name. Not once. He spoke for 15 more minutes. Stories about growth, mergers, trucks, markets. He even told a joke about how one of the early delivery vans used to backfire and scare the warehouse dog. But my name never came up. No mention of the invoice I'd brought in. No mention of the times I filled in for sick dispatchers during college. No mention of the consulting help I gave when they tried to digitize their routing system and called me in at midnight to fix a mess they didn't understand. Nothing. I was invisible. When he wrapped up, the room stood again. More clapping, whistles, a standing ovation for a man who spent his life driving numbers and people like they were the same thing. I didn't stand. I stared at my water glass and felt something hard settle in my chest. That was it. The final confirmation. I could have won an industry award, revolutionized fleet logistics, saved a company millions, and it wouldn't have mattered. Because I wasn't Nathan. I wasn't cut from the Dalton cloth. To him, I was a drifter. When the applause died down, the MC leaned back into the mic. And now, a few words from the family. I stood up. People turned, but I didn't walk to the podium. I walked to the stage, gift box in hand, not shaking, not rushing. Dad looked confused. His eyebrows lifted just slightly. When I got close, I held out the box. He didn't take it at first. I stepped in closer, calm as still water. From the one who drifted, I said. Then I set the box down in front of him, just above the mic stand, a black box with a silver ribbon catching the light. I turned around and walked off the stage without another word. The room fell into stunned silence. No applause, no whispers, just frozen faces and flickering slideshow images behind me. The only sound was my own footsteps crossing the ballroom floor. I didn't stop, didn't look back, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for his approval. I wasn't hoping he'd call out my name, because I knew now he never would. I didn't need to burn bridges, just needed to stop building new ones across the same dead river. I walked straight out of that ballroom, didn't stop to shake hands, didn't glance toward Nathan or Mom, didn't pause when some woman from corporate tried to say my name with a question mark at the end. I was done. Outside, Tulsa was warm and stale, the kind of summer night that smelled like asphalt and old grass. I didn't know where I was going, just started driving. Ended up in an empty parking lot behind a shuttered strip mall, parked under a half-dead light pole and sat in silence. No music, no AC. Just me and the faint hum of street traffic in the distance. I stared at my hands. They weren't shaking. That surprised me. I expected adrenaline, maybe regret, but all I felt was calm. Not peace, not yet, but something close to stillness, like stepping off a treadmill you didn't realize had been running for 39 years. My phone started buzzing on the passenger seat. First a call from Nathan. Decline. Then Mom. Then Nathan again. I let it ring. Let all of it ring. Eventually, I opened the glove box and pulled out my backup charger. Plugged the phone in just to keep it alive. Morbid curiosity. I wanted to see how many calls would stack up. I leaned back and closed my eyes for a second. And just like that, I remembered the box. Inside that black gift box was the original invoice from 2010. My first independent win. The one he never saw, never acknowledged. $12,000 in contracted freight, brokered by a kid with no contacts and a landline. 14 cold calls, 2 in-person pitches, and a long-shot email that finally got a yes. I remembered how excited I'd been, how I drove straight to Dad's office and showed it to him. He looked at the numbers, nodded once, said, "Don't mess it up." That was all. No good job, no handshake, no lunch. No, just don't mess it up. I'd kept that invoice anyway. Scanned it, printed a copy on clean paper, slid it into a folder. That night before the gala, I wrapped it in a box like it was precious, because to me, it was. On top of the invoice, I'd left a sticky note. Simple black ink on yellow paper. The one win you never saw. That's what I gave him. Not a watch. Not some glass plaque he'd forget in a closet. I gave him the one piece of evidence that I had tried. That I'd earned something. That I had been right there, building alongside him, even if he never noticed. And maybe, deep down, I knew what would happen. Maybe I knew he wouldn't open it in front of the crowd. That it would follow him home like a question he didn't know how to answer. I imagined him unwrapping it later that night, the black paper crumpling in his lap, the invoice in his hands, the handwriting on the note, plain and calm. The one win you never saw. That box wasn't a gesture, it was a mirror. It was a, let him sit with it, let him feel the weight. I didn't leave with rage, I didn't make a scene. I gave him the truth, and walked away before he could twist it into something else. I stayed in that parking lot for a while. Let the air go still. Let the calls keep piling up. I'd said my piece, and this time I wasn't waiting for his. The old man who never blinked finally looked unsure. The next morning I woke up in the motel room to a phone vibrating off the nightstand like it was possessed. I blinked at the screen. 26 missed messages. Nathan had called 11 times. Mom, 8. Dad, 5. A couple from unknown numbers, too. Probably people from the company or relatives who hadn't spoken to me in years but suddenly felt entitled to an opinion. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I got dressed, checked out, and started walking. Downtown Tulsa on a Sunday morning is quieter than a confession. I wandered past closed diners and old brick buildings, the same streets I used to cut through as a teenager. My sneakers hit the sidewalk with slow, even steps. It felt like I was shedding armor with every block. Around 5 that evening, I turned onto my childhood street. The houses all looked smaller now, like someone had shrunk them slightly when I wasn't looking. Even Dad's lawn, once obsessively manicured, had a few weeds poking through. I parked at the curb, sat in the car for a minute, no music, no breathing exercises, just bracing. Then I got out and walked up the driveway. The front door was cracked open. I didn't knock. He was in the den. Same recliner, same angle, same glass of cheap bourbon he poured into crystal like it meant something. The black box sat on the coffee table in front of him, lid off. The invoice was unfolded next to an old coaster. The sticky note, my note, was in his hand. He didn't look at me when I walked in, just said, "You blindsided me." I stood in the doorway. "No," I said, "you ignored me, for 30 years. He finally looked up. His jaw was tight, but his eyes, they weren't angry. They were unsettled. He looked tired. "I didn't know how to raise someone like you," he said. I let out a quiet, bitter laugh. "You didn't even try." Silence. The air in the room felt thick, like a pressure cooker just clicked off. He shifted forward, elbows on his knees, eyes still on the invoice. "You always had your head in computers, in numbers. I never understood it, couldn't connect to it." "You didn't need to understand it," I said, stepping closer. "You just needed to respect it." He didn't respond, just rubbed his thumb over the corner of the sticky note. I could feel myself shaking, not with rage, with clarity. "You always wanted a version of me that looked like Nathan," I said. "And when I didn't fit that mold, you decided I didn't count." "I didn't say that. You didn't have to." He went quiet again. Then he said something I didn't expect. "You remind me of my father." That stopped me. He didn't say it like a compliment, or an insult, just a fact. "He never gave me a damn inch," he said, voice lower now. "I ran this company to prove something to him. Thought if I climbed high enough, he'd see me. But he never did." I stared at him. "So you turned around and did the same thing to me?" He nodded slowly. "Guess I did." We sat in that quiet for a while. No tears, no hand on the shoulder, no dramatic swell of reconciliation. But for the first time in my life, he wasn't trying to win the conversation. He was just listening. "I'm not coming back," I said finally. "Not to the company, not to this house. I needed to say what I said, and now I'm moving forward." He nodded again. Not fast, not dramatic, just enough. "You're good at what you do," he said after a pause. "Always were." I didn't say thank you. I wasn't there to make him feel better. "I left something in the box," he added. "Look under the flap." I hesitated, then stepped forward, lifted the lid, and peeled back the inside flap. There was a photo, faded, edges curled from time. Me, age 14, standing next to him by the first Dalton delivery van, grease on my face, grinning. He had his hand on my shoulder, on the back, in his handwriting. "You fixed the carburetor that day. I do remember." That was all. No name, no sign-off, just that. I slid the photo into my jacket pocket, then turned to leave. He didn't stop me, didn't ask when I'd be back. I walked out the door and closed it behind me, quiet and final. And somehow, even without an apology carved in stone, something shifted. Not enough to heal everything, but enough to stop the bleeding. When you stop chasing someone's respect, you start finding your own. 2 weeks later, I was back in Chicago. My apartment felt different. Not physically, but in the way a room feels when you're no longer trying to fit your whole self into a corner of it. On my first morning back, I opened my laptop and scrolled through a stack of unread emails. Buried between client updates and tech blog subscriptions was one from my boss. Subject: still good for the keynote in Atlanta? He'd asked me before, months back. Some big national logistics tech conference. I'd deflected then. Said I wasn't sure I had the right kind of voice. But now, I hit reply. Yes, I'm in. 3 days later, I was standing in front of a full ballroom at the Georgia Freight Tech Expo. Same setting as Dad's retirement gala, but this time, I wasn't in the shadows. I was center stage. A giant screen behind me showed my name and title. Ray Dalton, Senior Systems Architect, Dispatch AI. They gave me a wireless mic and a 10-minute slot. I took 15, not because I rambled, but because the crowd kept leaning in. I spent most of my early career trying to fit into someone else's version of success, I told them. I thought if I just did everything right, if I hit the numbers, stayed quiet, stayed humble, someone would eventually say, "You matter." A few heads nodded. But here's the thing. Sometimes the clearest routes come after you stop asking for directions. That line hit. I paused, looked around the room. Dozens of faces, tech people, trucking people, engineers, founders, some younger than me, some older, all listening. I built my first dispatch simulator at 13, I said. No one clapped, no one said it was smart. They said it looked like cartoons. But that cartoon became the skeleton of a model that now runs over 60,000 deliveries a day. More nods. A few murmurs of approval. I don't say that to brag. I say that because if you've ever been told you were too weird, too quiet, too soft-spoken, if you've ever felt like the backup plan in someone else's family photo, just know you're not broken. You're just building in a different direction. Applause broke out. Honest applause. The kind that doesn't wait until the end. I ended the talk on this. I wasn't lost. I was just going somewhere different. That line. That one traveled. By the time I got back to my seat, my phone was buzzing. Mentions, reposts. A clip from someone in the crowd had already gone viral in a niche corner of the logistics and tech world. People I didn't know were quoting that line. I wasn't lost. I was just going somewhere different. A dispatcher from Indiana DM'd me. Man, this hit hard. Been in trucking 15 years. Never seen someone say it like that. A military logistics planner shared the clip with the caption, "Some of us never get seen. Thanks for making us visible." It wasn't ego. It wasn't pride. It was something deeper. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to get clapped for by the wrong audience. I was speaking to the ones who'd been building in silence, just like I had. And they heard me. I didn't mention my father in that talk. Didn't say a word about the retirement gala, the box, or the years I spent invisible. But in a way, everything I said was shaped by that silence. Not in bitterness, in proof. Because this time, the spotlight wasn't handed to me. I built it. Sometimes apologies come after you stop needing them. 3 weeks after the keynote, a package arrived at my apartment. No return address. Just my name, handwritten in stiff capital letters on a manila envelope. Like the writer wasn't sure if they were mailing something or sending it into the past. I opened it slowly, careful with the seal like it might bite. Inside was a photo, old, worn, the kind of print you don't see anymore, edges curled, color faded like it had sat in a drawer for decades. It was me, 14 years old, standing beside Dad in front of the first Dalton delivery van. I was in an oversized hoodie, grease on my cheek, half smiling like I wasn't sure if I was allowed to look proud. He had one hand on my shoulder. His face was younger but serious. Classic Harold Dalton, always half ready to tell someone what they were doing wrong. I remembered the moment. That day I helped him fix the carburetor. He was rushing to get the van ready for a last-minute shipment. I'd spent the morning elbow-deep in engine parts, learning as I went. We got it running again. He didn't say thank you. Didn't even look me in the eye, just muttered, "Tighten that bolt," and climbed in. But someone had taken a picture. Mom, maybe. On the back, in Dad's handwriting, his stiff, accountant-style block letters, was a short message. I do remember. I just buried it. You were always sharp. I was scared of that. I'm sorry. No name, no date. Just that. It didn't say love, Dad. It didn't ask me to come home. It didn't beg for forgiveness or tie things up with a nice little bow. It was just human. And for once, he didn't try to be bigger than the moment. He let it stand. Awkward, late, honest. I sat with it for a long time. No music, no distractions. Just the weight of that photo in my hands. Then I opened the bottom drawer of my desk. Pulled out the first dispatch map I ever designed. I'd kept it all these years. Creased and marked up with red pen, routes drawn by a kid who believed he could make things run smoother. I slid the photo in beside it. 2 artifacts from different versions of me. One that wanted approval, and one that had stopped needing it. I didn't call him. Didn't write back. Didn't text to say I got it. Because this wasn't about starting something new. It was about ending something right. That photo didn't fix everything. but it gave me something I never thought I'd get. Not a rewrite, not a hug, just a moment of truth, quiet, late, and finally real. I wasn't a footnote in Dad's story anymore. I was the author of my own. A month after the keynote, I got an email from a community college coordinator just outside Milwaukee. She ran a small mentorship program for students interested in logistics tech. Most of them came from working-class families, few had industry connections. She'd seen the viral clip of my talk and asked if I'd speak to the group. No PowerPoint, she wrote. Just honesty. I said yes. 2 weeks later, I sat in a folding chair in a stuffy rec room with 8 young guys in cargo pants and hoodies. One of them, maybe 19, raised his hand and said, "My dad's in trucking too. Thinks I'm wasting time with code." The group chuckled. I nodded. Mine used to say I was wasting time on cartoons. That got a louder laugh. Then I looked the kid in the eye. "You're not here to make someone else proud. You're here to build something they couldn't imagine." Silence. Then a small, understanding smile from him, the kind that said, "Got it." That night, I posted the keynote clip again. This time I added a caption. Some of us weren't born into the room. We had to build the door first. Keep building. The post exploded. Driver unions shared it. Logistics recruiters shared it. Former military dispatchers reposted it with stories of their own. Stories about being overlooked, underestimated, quietly excellent. I got hundreds of DMs over the next few days. One from a woman who'd been a dispatcher for 18 years and never promoted once. "Thank you for saying what I've been too tired to explain." One from a veteran who'd designed convoy routes in Afghanistan but now worked night shift in a regional depot. "Didn't know anyone saw us." One comment hit me like a gut punch. "Some of us never get seen. Thanks for showing us we're still worth something." I read that line over and over. I realized then this wasn't about my father anymore, or Nathan, or any of the people who once boxed me into a version of myself that fit their comfort zone. It was about the people like me, the ones who built in silence, got called weird or unnecessary or background, the ones who solved the problems but never got the toast, the ones who got left out of the slideshow. It was about turning my story into a roadmap. Not for revenge, for redemption. I didn't need anyone else's name to validate mine. I didn't need their stage. I had built my own, and now others were stepping onto it too. For the first time in my life, I saw what legacy could actually look like. Not a speech at a banquet. Not a name etched into the side of a building. Legacy was someone you'd never met saying, "Because of your story, I didn't quit mine." That was enough, more than enough.
YouTube picked this for you. Tap it. Let's see if they guessed right.